Emma begins in the quiet English village of Highbury, a place where social life is small enough for everyone to know one another, yet complicated enough for every look, visit, and conversation to carry meaning. At the center of this world stands Emma Woodhouse, young, beautiful, clever, and wealthy. She lives at Hartfield with her affectionate but anxious father, and because she has fortune, comfort, and status, she enjoys a freedom that many women of her time do not. She does not need to marry for security. She believes she can shape her own life. That independence makes her confident, but it also makes her dangerously certain of her own judgment. Emma is kind-hearted by nature, yet she loves arranging people, interpreting feelings, and guiding events. She thinks she understands other hearts better than anyone else. The story that follows will gently teach her how mistaken that confidence can be. When the novel opens, Emma's beloved governess and companion, Miss Taylor, has just married Mr. Weston. This marriage is a happy one, and Emma feels both pleased and lonely. Miss Taylor has been more than a governess. She has been a friend, guide, and calming influence in Emma's life. Now that she is gone, Emma finds herself with more independence than ever. Instead of simply missing her, however, Emma turns quickly to self-congratulation. She convinces herself that she was the one who brought Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston together. She imagines that she has a special talent for matchmaking, a talent almost like an art. Mr. Knightley, an old family friend and one of the few people willing to speak honestly to her, warns her against this vanity. He tells her she gives herself too much credit and may do harm if she meddles in other people's affairs. Emma listens, but not deeply. She is too pleased with herself to believe the warning applies. Soon Emma finds a new focus for her energy in Harriet Smith, a sweet and pretty young woman of uncertain parentage who attends a local boarding school. Harriet is gentle, impressionable, grateful for attention, and eager to admire. To Emma, she seems the perfect project. She decides Harriet must be improved, refined, and guided toward a more elegant social future. Instead of letting Harriet remain happy among the simple friends she already knows, Emma begins shaping her tastes, opinions, and expectations. Harriet is flattered by Emma's friendship and quickly begins to see the world through Emma's eyes. This is the beginning of one of the novel's most important relationships because Harriet is not naturally foolish or vain, but she is easily influenced. In taking Harriet under her wing, Emma is not acting with cruelty. She truly believes she is helping. Yet kindness mixed with vanity can still do damage, especially when one person begins treating another's life like a design to be arranged. Harriet already has an admirer, Robert Martin, a respectable and capable young farmer. He is honest, hardworking, sensible, and sincerely attached to Harriet. From every practical and emotional point of view, he is an excellent match for her. Harriet likes him and is comfortable in his company. But Emma immediately disapproves. Because she imagines Harriet to be worthy of greater social distinction, she persuades herself that a farmer is beneath her friend. When Robert Martin proposes, Harriet does not know what to do. Left to herself, she might have accepted him gladly. But Emma influences her strongly, dismissing his merits and encouraging Harriet to refuse. Harriet obeys. It is the first major example of Emma's interference causing real harm. The tragedy is quiet rather than dramatic. A good, sincere offer is rejected not because of lack of feeling, but because of borrowed vanity. Mr. Knightley, who knows Robert Martin well and respects him deeply, is displeased. He understands at once what Emma has done, and he judges it both foolish and unfair. Having prevented Harriet from marrying Robert Martin, Emma immediately begins imagining a superior future for her. She fixes her attention on the local vicar, Mr. Elton, a man whose manners are polished enough to seem promising. Emma convinces herself that he is secretly in love with Harriet. Every ordinary sign of politeness becomes, in Emma's imagination, proof of hidden affection. A compliment, a visit, a smile, a shared walk, all are interpreted as evidence of a romantic attachment. Harriet, who trusts Emma completely, begins to believe it too. In this way, a fantasy becomes dangerous because it is no longer Emma's private mistake. It begins shaping Harriet's hopes. Austen shows how easy it is for people to build a story from fragments and then fall in love with the story instead of the truth. Emma is not observing Mr. Elton honestly. She is reading him like a character in a play she has written herself, and she is about to discover that reality will not follow her script. Emma paints a portrait of Harriet, and this small event becomes another opportunity for fantasy. Mr. Elton admires the portrait warmly and is eager to have it framed. Emma sees his enthusiasm as further proof that he loves Harriet. Mr. Knightley sees the matter differently. He recognizes that Mr. Elton's attentions may not be directed where Emma imagines. But Emma is too invested in her own idea to question it. Her cleverness now works against her because the more intelligent she is, the more skillfully she justifies her errors. Harriet, meanwhile, glows under the attention and begins dreaming of an elegant future. It is one of Austen's great strengths that she allows these misunderstandings to grow naturally through small social moments instead of sudden dramatic twists. Nothing outrageous has happened. No one has declared love. Yet the emotional danger is increasing all the time because Emma is using imagination in place of humility. She does not merely fail to see the truth. She actively replaces it with something more pleasing. The illusion collapses on Christmas Eve. After a social gathering, Mr. Elton finds himself alone with Emma in a carriage and suddenly declares his love. Emma is stunned. She had been so certain he admired Harriet that the truth feels almost absurd. But Mr. Elton makes his position unmistakably clear. He has never cared for Harriet. In fact, he views her as socially insignificant. His attentions, compliments, and eagerness had all been directed at Emma herself, whom he considered a wealthy and desirable match. Emma rejects him firmly, shocked both by his presumption and by her own mistake. The scene is painful because it exposes not only Mr. Elton's vanity, but Emma's blindness. She now sees that she has misread everything and has, through that error, encouraged Harriet's hopes without foundation. For the first time, she experiences the embarrassment of having been confidently wrong. Yet even this lesson, though sharp, will not fully cure her of meddling. Emma must now tell Harriet the truth, and the moment is painful. Harriet is disappointed, confused, and hurt. Her brief dreams of romance vanish all at once. Emma feels remorse, and rightly so. She realizes that she encouraged hopes that should never have been formed. Yet even here, her guilt is incomplete. She recognizes the mistake, but she does not yet fully understand the deeper flaw beneath it, her habit of treating other lives as arrangements for her own imagination. Harriet forgives easily because Harriet is affectionate and trusting, but the wound remains. Meanwhile, Mr. Elton reveals a pettier, more unpleasant side of his character once rejected. His vanity becomes visible. Emma, who once thought him suitable, now sees him more clearly and is relieved not to have tied Harriet's future to such a man. The experience is humiliating, but it also marks a first crack in Emma's certainty. She has been wrong, and the consequences were not amusing. They touched another person's heart. Into Highbury's social world comes another important figure, Jane Fairfax, the accomplished niece of Miss Bates. Jane is beautiful, well-mannered, musically talented, and universally admired. Unlike Emma, however, she has little fortune and uncertain prospects. Unless she marries well, she may be forced into the life of a governess, a respectable but often lonely and dependent profession. Emma's feelings toward Jane are mixed. She cannot openly dislike someone so graceful and deserving, yet she feels a subtle resentment. Jane's accomplishments make Emma uncomfortable, perhaps because they expose how much Emma herself relies on natural ease and privilege. Jane carries herself with composure, but beneath that composure lies pressure. She must endure admiration that does not solve her future. She must accept kindness without true security. Emma does not yet appreciate the full burden Jane bears. Instead, she often treats her with coolness, and this coolness is one more sign that Emma's generosity still has limits when it comes into conflict with pride or jealousy. Another long-anticipated arrival soon stirs Highbury's imagination: Frank Churchill, the handsome and lively son of Mr. Weston. Frank was raised by wealthy relatives and has long been prevented from visiting his father and new stepmother as often as he should. This delay has already made him something of a romantic figure in local conversation. When he finally appears, he is charming, fashionable, animated, and quick to please. Emma is immediately interested, not necessarily because she loves him, but because he is lively enough to amuse her and socially suitable enough to invite speculation. Others also begin to wonder whether Emma and Frank might become attached. Mr. Knightley, however, does not trust Frank completely. He finds him too smooth, too eager to please, and not always sufficiently principled. Emma brushes off these concerns. Frank seems delightful, and in a small village where novelty is rare, delight can be persuasive. Yet Austen prepares the reader carefully. Charm, once again, may conceal more than it reveals. A mysterious gift arrives for Jane Fairfax, a beautiful pianoforte sent anonymously. The whole neighborhood is curious. Who could have sent such an expensive and personal present? Jane appears uneasy rather than pleased, and Emma, instead of responding with sympathy, immediately turns the event into another field for speculation. She invents theories, the most persistent of which connects Jane to Mr. Dixon, a married man she had met elsewhere. Emma finds the idea entertaining and repeats it with a carelessness that reveals how much she still enjoys romantic invention at other people's expense. In truth, Jane's unease points to something serious, but Emma is too occupied with her own cleverness to see it. The anonymous pianoforte is one of Austen's most elegant symbols in the novel, a beautiful object, admired by all, yet carrying a hidden meaning that almost no one reads correctly. Once again, truth exists quietly beneath the social surface, while Emma and others fill the silence with guesses. Emma and Frank Churchill begin a lively social friendship full of teasing, talk, and easy attention. Their conversations are sparkling enough that many observers assume a romance must be growing between them. Emma herself is uncertain. She enjoys Frank, enjoys being admired by him, and enjoys the idea that others may think them well matched. Yet she is not deeply moved. Her feelings remain playful rather than serious. This is one of the novel's quiet ironies. The couple everyone assumes may be forming is the couple least governed by real love. Frank flatters Emma because she is safe for him to flatter. Emma responds because the attention amuses her and flatters her vanity. Neither is fully honest, and both participate in a performance that distracts the community from the deeper truth. Mr. Knightley watches all of this with increasing discomfort. He sees in Frank too much levity and in Emma too much self-satisfaction. His concern is not dramatic jealousy as yet, but moral unease. Mr. Elton soon returns to Highbury with a wife, and she is a source of constant comedy and discomfort. Mrs. Elton is fashionable, self-important, noisy in her confidence, and determined to seem superior in every company she enters. She speaks too much, praises herself too openly, and offers patronage where none is wanted. Emma instantly dislikes her, partly because Mrs. Elton is vulgar in a refined disguise, and partly because she exposes how unpleasant self-importance can sound when displayed without charm. Yet Austen's irony works subtly here, because Mrs. Elton's vanity is not wholly unlike Emma's own, only louder and less elegant. Emma can see the ugliness of that behavior in another woman long before she fully recognizes it in herself. Mrs. Elton also takes an interest in Jane Fairfax, offering to arrange her future as though Jane were already helpless and dependent. Jane must endure this with politeness, another reminder of how fragile her situation truly is. Wealth gives Emma freedom. Lack of it traps Jane into tolerating indignities. The story reaches one of its most important turning points during an outing to Box Hill. The gathering includes Emma, Frank Churchill, Jane Fairfax, Mr. Knightley, Miss Bates, and others. The mood is restless and strained. Frank, in a playful and foolish spirit, encourages everyone to say clever things. Emma, excited by the chance to be witty and perhaps too eager to impress, makes a remark at Miss Bates's expense, implying that Miss Bates talks too much and should limit herself. It is a small sentence, but it lands with real cruelty. Miss Bates, poor, talkative, harmless, and dependent on the goodwill of others, is wounded. The group feels the awkwardness at once. Mr. Knightley later speaks to Emma with unusual seriousness. He tells her she has been unkind, not merely rude. He reminds her that Miss Bates's poverty and social vulnerability make such mockery especially unjust. This rebuke cuts deeper than any Emma has received before, because she knows he is right. Her wit, which she so often admires in herself, has become a weapon. After Box Hill, Emma feels genuine shame. This is not the embarrassed annoyance she felt after misunderstanding Mr. Elton. It is moral pain. She understands that she has hurt someone undeserving, and worse, that she did so from vanity and thoughtlessness. Mr. Knightley's rebuke matters because it comes from someone whose judgment she deeply respects, but it would not matter if her conscience did not agree. For perhaps the first time in the novel, Emma's self-examination is serious and complete. She visits Miss Bates the next day, not dramatically, but humbly, and tries to repair the injury through kindness and attention. Austen does not treat this as a grand transformation completed in an instant. Emma is still herself, still quick, still proud in many ways. But this moment is crucial because it marks a shift from superficial regret to ethical awareness. She is beginning to understand that intelligence without humility can become cruelty, and that social power carries responsibilities she has not always honored. As the summer advances, Jane Fairfax appears increasingly pale and uneasy. Emma still speculates about her, but the truth has not yet been revealed. What no one in Highbury properly understands is that Jane has long been secretly engaged to Frank Churchill. Their engagement, formed earlier, has been concealed because Frank feared the disapproval of the wealthy aunt on whom his fortune depends. This secrecy has forced Jane into a deeply painful position. She must endure Frank's public flirtation with Emma, hear gossip, manage anxiety, and prepare for a future that may collapse at any moment. Frank enjoys the excitement of secrecy far more than Jane can afford to enjoy it. His charm, once delightful, now appears in a harsher light. He has been careless with Jane's peace and unfair to Emma's reputation. Austen does not make him a villain, but she makes clear that charm without steadiness can be selfish. Jane's quiet suffering, long overlooked, becomes one of the novel's saddest hidden currents. Everything changes when Frank Churchill's aunt dies. Freed from dependence on her approval, Frank can finally reveal the truth. He and Jane Fairfax have been secretly engaged. Highbury is astonished. Emma is shocked, though not heartbroken, because she never truly loved him. Instead, she feels the sting of having been used as a screen for someone else's secrecy. She now understands many past puzzles at once: the pianoforte, Jane's unease, Frank's inconsistent behavior. She sees that while she was inventing her own stories, a real story was unfolding before her unseen. To her credit, She responds generously once the truth is known. She no longer indulges rivalry toward Jane, and she can appreciate the depth of Jane's trial. Frank writes with apology and warmth, but the revelation exposes the limitations of his character. He is affectionate and sincere in feeling, yet weak in judgment and too fond of theatrical concealment. Emma's earlier delight in him now seems shallow and misguided. Just when one confusion has been resolved, another emerges. Harriet, whose affection once turned toward Mr. Elton under Emma's encouragement, now begins speaking of a different attachment. She hints that she has become interested in a man far superior to Robert Martin, a man of refinement and importance who has shown her particular kindness. Emma at first assumes Harriet must mean Frank Churchill. But gradually the truth dawns on her, and it hits with force. Harriet believes herself beloved by Mr. Knightley. Small acts of courtesy, generosity, and concern have been transformed, in Harriet's hopeful imagination, into signs of love. The cruel irony is that Emma herself helped create Harriet's habit of aspiring above her natural station. By persuading her to reject Robert Martin and by teaching her to think romantically upward, Emma helped prepare this new illusion. But the deepest shock has still not come. The moment Harriet speaks of Mr. Knightley, Emma suddenly understands something about herself that she had never faced before. As soon as Harriet names Mr. Knightley, Emma is overcome by a feeling more painful and more illuminating than anything she has yet experienced: jealousy. In that instant, she realizes that Mr. Knightley is not merely a family friend, not merely a trusted advisor or familiar companion. He is the man she loves. The knowledge comes not gradually but all at once, and with it comes fear. Emma sees, perhaps for the first time, how central he has always been to her inner life. His opinion matters more to her than anyone else's. His praise warms her. His blame wounds her. His absence would leave a real emptiness. Now she imagines the possibility of losing him to Harriet, and the thought is unbearable. This revelation is devastating, but also clarifying. Emma's heart, so often busy arranging imagined loves for others, has been ignorant of its own deepest attachment. Austen handles the moment brilliantly. Emma reaches truth not through clever deduction, but through emotional pain. Once Emma understands her feelings for Mr. Knightley, she sees many of her past actions in a new light. She realizes more fully how unfairly she treated Robert Martin and how wrongly she influenced Harriet. Had she not interfered, Harriet might already have been happily settled in a suitable and affectionate match. Instead, Harriet's mind was turned upward toward people who were never truly within her proper emotional world. Emma now judges herself with a severity she once reserved for others. Her imagination, once a source of pleasure, has become a source of remorse. She cannot easily repair the past, and this helplessness humbles her. For perhaps the first time, she stops thinking in terms of controlling outcomes and begins thinking in terms of accepting consequences. This change matters. Emma is maturing from a young woman who wishes to orchestrate life into one who understands that real affection cannot be arranged, borrowed, or forced. It must be honest, and honesty begins with admitting what one has done wrong. Mr. Knightley soon leaves for London, and Emma interprets his departure through the fears now filling her heart. She worries that he may indeed care for Harriet, or at least that she has lost the chance ever to know his feelings. In his absence, she feels his importance more strongly than ever. Hartfield, once comfortable, seems quieter. Daily life goes on, but inwardly everything has changed. Emma is no longer the secure observer of other people's romances. She has become vulnerable, uncertain, and unable to command the future. This vulnerability is new to her, and it deepens her humanity. She also behaves more tenderly toward Harriet, despite the pain of the situation, because she cannot wholly resent someone so gentle. Emma's struggle here is not that of a melodramatic heroine, but something subtler and more affecting. She suffers in silence while recognizing that she herself helped create the misunderstanding that may now cost her happiness. When Mr. Knightley returns, the emotional atmosphere changes at once. Emma senses the weight of every word and gesture between them. She is determined to behave with dignity and not expose her heart unless forced. Yet Austen fills this portion of the story with quiet intensity. Mr. Knightley, who has long been calm, reasonable, and morally steady, now seems moved in a different way. He seeks Emma out. He appears uneasy, earnest, and unlike his usual composed self. The years of familiarity between them make the moment richer, because what is about to be spoken does not grow from sudden passion alone. It grows from long affection, trust, argument, forgiveness, and mutual knowledge. Their connection has been built slowly across the whole novel. The reader now feels how much has always been present beneath the ordinary surface of their friendship. The question is whether Emma's fears will be confirmed or relieved. At last Mr. Knightley speaks, and what he says transforms Emma's world. He does not love Harriet. He loves Emma. His declaration is tender, respectful, and deeply moving because it is grounded in truth rather than fantasy. He has loved her not as a perfect woman, but as someone he knows fully, with all her faults, brilliance, warmth, selfishness, and growth. Emma, overwhelmed with happiness, can finally speak honestly too. The relief is immense. The fear that had humbled her now gives way to joy. Yet this proposal is unlike the romantic schemes Emma once imagined for others. It is not built from vanity, status, or superficial admiration. It is rooted in years of shared life and mutual moral influence. Mr. Knightley has guided Emma, challenged her, respected her, and loved her enough to tell her the truth. Emma has grown into someone more worthy of that love. Their union feels earned in the deepest sense. Once Emma's engagement to Mr. Knightley is understood, Harriet's hopes naturally fade. The misunderstanding is painful, but not devastating in the long term, because it was based more on suggestion and aspiration than on deep mutual attachment. Emma now behaves with much more wisdom and tenderness toward Harriet than she did before. She no longer tries to direct her life as a project. Instead, she allows Harriet's heart to return to what had once been genuine and healthy. Robert Martin appears again, steadfast as ever, and this time Harriet accepts him. The match that Emma once dismissed now stands revealed as exactly what it always was: affectionate, appropriate, and sincere. There is quiet justice in this outcome. Harriet is not punished for dreaming above herself, but she is gently restored to a truth that suits her happiness far better than fantasy ever could. Emma, in turn, learns to respect a form of goodness she once looked down upon. Even after the engagement, one practical obstacle remains: Emma cannot easily leave her father. Mr. Woodhouse is affectionate, harmless, and deeply anxious, especially about change. Emma has always cared for him with patient tenderness, and marriage cannot simply erase that duty. This domestic complication gives the ending of the novel a particularly human quality. The question is not whether love exists, but how love can fit into existing responsibilities. Mr. Knightley solves the matter generously by agreeing to come live at Hartfield after the marriage rather than requiring Emma to leave her father. It is an arrangement that reflects his character perfectly. He is not proud, theatrical, or possessive. He is practical, thoughtful, and willing to shape happiness around the needs of others. The solution also preserves what has always been central to Emma's life: family affection. In Austen's world, love is not isolated from domestic reality. It must live within it. Emma and Mr. Knightley are married, and the union feels both joyful and deeply fitting. Unlike Emma's earlier imagined romances, this one does not depend on mystery or dramatic misunderstanding. It rests on knowledge, trust, and growth. Emma has not become a different person entirely. She remains lively, intelligent, and occasionally spirited. But she has gained humility, moral awareness, and a more generous understanding of other lives. Mr. Knightley remains what he has always been: honorable, perceptive, kind, and unafraid to speak truth with love. Together they form a partnership of affection and balance. Their marriage does not merely conclude a love story. It resolves the novel's central education. Emma, who began by believing she could arrange happiness for others, finds happiness only when she stops controlling, starts seeing clearly, and learns to love honestly. One of the deepest themes in Emma is social class, and Austen handles it with subtle complexity. Emma's mistakes are often tied to rank. She overvalues gentility, undervalues honest work, and assumes she can improve Harriet by lifting her socially rather than understanding her truly. Yet Austen does not flatten society into simple moral opposites. Goodness and foolishness exist at many levels. Mr. Knightley, a gentleman, is admirable. Robert Martin, a farmer, is admirable too. Mr. Elton, though polished, is vain and shallow. Miss Bates, though poor and ridiculous in some eyes, is generous and harmless. Emma must learn that human worth cannot be measured by elegance alone. This lesson does not destroy social reality in the novel, but it purifies moral vision within it. Emma's growth depends partly on seeing that respectability without kindness means little, and that quiet integrity may exist where pride least expects to find it. Emma is a novel about imagination as much as romance. Emma Woodhouse's mind is active, quick, and creative. She reads patterns everywhere and delights in possibility. That imagination is not evil. In many ways, it is part of her charm. But imagination without humility becomes distortion. Emma repeatedly mistakes guesses for truths, performances for feelings, and appearances for destiny. She turns other people into stories before allowing them to remain themselves. Through error, embarrassment, and remorse, she learns a harder and wiser use of the imagination, not to invent reality, but to sympathize with it. By the end, she is more capable of seeing beyond her own perspective into the real emotions of others. Austen does not punish Emma for being lively-minded. She teaches her to join liveliness with moral seriousness. That is why the novel feels so rich. It is not about crushing personality, but about disciplining it into kindness and truth. Mr. Knightley stands apart in the novel because he combines intelligence with conscience. He is one of the few people who sees Emma clearly from the beginning, yet he does not reject her for her faults. Instead, he remains patient, honest, and hopeful for her growth. He criticizes when criticism is necessary, but never from malice. He respects Emma's mind even when he disapproves of her conduct. This balance makes his love uniquely meaningful. He does not fall for an idealized image of her. He loves the real woman, and he wants her to become better not for his convenience, but for her own sake. In a novel full of misunderstandings, hidden engagements, false hopes, and social posturing, Mr. Knightley represents steady truth. He is not dazzling like Frank Churchill, nor socially ambitious like Mr. Elton. His virtue is quieter, but far more durable. Emma's final happiness depends on learning to value exactly that kind of man. In the end, Emma is far more than a charming story about village courtship. It is a portrait of a young woman learning the difference between influence and wisdom, between wit and kindness, between fantasy and love. Emma begins with power, confidence, and comfort, but not with full self-knowledge. Through a series of mistakes, she gradually comes to see the limits of her judgment and the responsibilities of her position. She learns to respect sincerity over polish, to feel remorse when she causes pain, and to recognize love not as a game of arrangement, but as something rooted in truth and mutual regard. Jane Austen's genius lies in making this moral education entertaining, tender, and quietly profound. Emma remains timeless because many people, in one form or another, are like Emma, clever, certain, well-intentioned, and blind in ways they do not suspect. Her journey reminds us that real maturity begins when we learn to see others clearly and ourselves honestly.